We're looking at the subsidies in Europe. They've got this deadline of 2012. They're looking at removing some of the subsidies, or they're talking most of the subsidies, and altering them onto different land-based rather than unit-based. Do you think that will go ahead and there'll be a change?
Well, personally, I think 2012 is already a long way off, and I think that in as much as that I think reform will come in probably even before 2012, I think we're probably looking at something like 2009. Don't forget that France is taking over the European presidency as of the 1st of July this year, 2008, and the French President, Monsieur Sarkozy, is looking to incorporate within the French 6 months rotating presidency, looking to incorporating a discussion on agricultural reform. Not because he wants to reform for French farming, he doesn't. He's looking to nip it in the bud. He's looking to push forward things that will be acceptable to the New Zealanders, the Australians, the Brazilians and the Americans. So to push through just enough reform to allow it to be acceptable, rather than finding France, which France has always done, or Europe has always done, is not think of any kind of reform, and then having to do far more because... so
there'll be limited agricultural reform probably
They will do as little as they possibly can, but this time, rather than being reactive, they will be proactive and actually try and think of things to do and reform to be done before they're being obliged to.
And what would the profitability be like in farming in France without subsidies? The grain farmers are obviously making a living.
Well, the grain farmers are making a living. Beef farmers will never be, but you're talking about big units, and when you're talking about big units, you need to employ a man. If you're employing a man, well, as I was saying to you earlier, Andrew, you're looking at having the cost of employing somebody in order of 25,000, 26,000 euros a year. And so therefore you have
40% of that is farm insurance.
Not quite. No, we were talking about something slightly different. There was the farmer is the farm insurance actual of about, if you're paying a man a wage about 16,000, you're looking at about another maybe another 7,000, good 7,000 euros in farm insurance, yes, for the man.
So the beef farming is not profitable at the moment?
Beef farming is profitable, but the thing about France that nobody outside France can understand is that farming is profitable here on a family size unit. Once you start getting big, because we've just been saying the cost of employing a man, once you start getting big, you've got to be very, very big, because you've got to cover the cost of employment, and that is expensive over here. Whereas farms tend to be family units, where the farmer, his wife, and even his children will participate in the daily work if necessary, and they will do what they can without employing anybody. There are means of employing people, but on a shared basis, the same way as you would use machinery on a shared basis in a machinery ring.
And because in France gets a huge chunk of the European quota, European EU, the European Union allowance, is spent on French agriculture, is about 30%, isn't it? And so in Europe, is there a move to cut that down so France is not getting such a big proportion?
Well, of course, with more countries joining the EU, they all want a little bit of the cake, and of course the French have set the system up for themselves, let's be quite honest. I mean, the French aren't damn fools, they're not. They set the system up to look after themselves. When you consider that, which I haven't told you already, but you might find this staggering, but over 40% of French agricultural land is less favoured area. That's not because the land is rubbish, that's because the land is actually very good, but the French were very savvy and actually
pushed a lot of the land into second class.
Exactly, so that they got more benefits. This isn't something that's been done in the last 5 or 10 years, this has been done since the 60s or whatever.
So they've been getting a bigger percentage partly because more of their land is considered to be second class.
Exactly.
Smart people.
They think the subsidy in Britain is hill livestock, it's called, and you literally in Britain you need to actually walk onto a hill to actually say, well, okay, this will be classified as such. Where I live here, it's in ordinary rolling Burgundy countryside, principally pasture. That's all less favoured area.
In England, we were staying with farmers up on the moors, and they were saying they've had trouble getting money out of the government for some of the. I don't know how that works, but you might know more than me. They're laying down hedges and spending money, but then they're not getting the cheque out of the government.
No, well, that's because I think the English or British government, they're using money that comes out of Brussels to fund anything apart from farming. The difference between one of the many differences between Britain and France is that in France they're looking to encourage you to use and apply for all the subsidies and premiums available, whereas in Britain they're looking to hide them and to stop you having them because they want to contribute less to the European agricultural budget.
Okay. So they're looking at cutting their
But
costs.
that's been in since Thatcher was in power in the 80s. So she was the one who had the famous rebate, with Thatcher's rebate. She brought in, even though she had 3 members of her cabinet were farmers, she brought in because she wanted to be contributing less to the European agricultural budget because she realised that the French were the net beneficiaries and the Germans and the British were the net payers.
Paying all that.